And joining us now to unpack what's next for the region is David Wurmser, Middle East Affairs Analyst at the Center for Security Policy and former Senior Advisor to U.S. Vice President Cheney on the Middle East and Strategic Affairs. David, thank you so much for joining us. Always great to have you. Now, amid the regional tensions, the U.S. has approved arms sales to Israel and Saudi Arabia, totaling over $15 billion. Now, the State Department said the sales wouldn't affect the basic military balance in the region, but would enhance Israel's capability to meet current and future threats. What's your read on these arms sales and how it fits into deterrence in the region?
Well, it is, again, the president is trying to first anchor certain countries to the Western structure. So Saudi Arabia, they're worried about Saudi Arabia drifting off to China or so forth. So arms sales has always been one of the main ways to anchor that. The second thing is, of course, it's good for American industry. These are fairly large ticket items. I think Saudi Arabia was $9 billion. The Israelis are 6 point some billion. There is a time difference, though. The Saudis were talking about a much longer time frame. The Israelis, the Apache helicopters, which you have on the screen here, those are short fuse. The Israelis would be getting 30 of those fairly quickly. So what the president is doing from a strategic point of view is he's selling in the long term to the Saudis, but he's giving or selling to the Israelis much more short term, immediate to the Israelis. And that means that he sees Israel's power as a major element of American deterrence in the region and American power in the region that allows us to reduce our power footprint to some extent.
Now, President Trump told reporters Saturday that Iran was, quote, seriously talking with Washington, suggesting that negotiations are underway. Here's the Iranian foreign minister on what could be on the table for a deal. Let's listen to that now.
President Trump said no nuclear weapons, and we fully agree with that. That could be a very good deal. Of course, in return, we expect sanction lifting. So that deal is possible. Let's do not talk about impossible things.
First, how are you reading that? Is it true Iran wants no nuclear weapons? Because reporting seems to point the other way, saying the regime's program is quite developed.
Well, first of all, it has a program that was active in developing a nuclear weapon, and there was activity that could only be interpreted as developing a nuclear weapon. So it's outright dishonest to say it. The second thing is they've never really said that they would want nuclear weapons. They have talked about it obliquely, like, oh, Israel's a one nuclear weapon country that we can wipe out. We will do that, etc. But they've never said we are developing nuclear weapons. They've never admitted to it. So I'm not surprised they wouldn't change it now. But you have to parse what he just said, what Arakchi just said. He said, we don't want nuclear weapons. Trump has said we don't want nuclear weapons. There's a common ground there. President Trump has not said that we don't want Iranian nuclear weapons. He says no nuclear program because President Trump knows that a nuclear program in Iran will be abused as a military program to develop nuclear weapons. So the terms President Trump's put forward for no nuclear program is quite extensive. Whereas what Arakchi is basically saying, okay, we can have a nuclear program, we just won't develop nuclear weapons, and you'll have to trust us on that. There's no common ground there. And as far as the other unrealistic elements that he mentioned, those are the other demands that President Trump has put forward, which are to dismantle the proxy network, which is choking Israel and has led to a regional war for the last 2.5 years. And then second of all, the missiles, because the missiles are what threatens American troops across the region. It's what threatens Israel. And we just saw that Iran tried or maybe did test a 10,000-kilometer range missile, which means that all of Europe is now under Iran's missile threat.
And speaking of concerns over a regional war, the president was asked about that while at Mar-a-Lago. Here's actually what he had to say on that.
Sir, on Iran, the Supreme Leader today said that U.S. attack could spark a regional war. Do you have any response to that?
Why wouldn't he say that? Of course you're going to say that, but we have the biggest, most powerful ships in the world over there, very close, a couple of days, and hopefully we'll make a deal. If we don't make a deal, then we'll find out whether or not he was right.
How do you see this playing out right now? What are the odds for a negotiated end, and what could that look like?
Well, I think the Iranians are trying to negotiate for a negotiation. President Trump is essentially negotiating an ultimatum. And that's a gap that's not going to be easy to overcome. Where you may see this, I don't think it's going to avert a war. I think the president is pretty far out on a limb now. I think he's set out terms that Iran up front cannot accept. And I think the president is serious about this, and he knows that there would be a huge price to pay if he backs off. But I don't think the question is whether he will strike or not. The question is once the United States begins an attack on Iran, will it go all the way to bring down the regime, or is there a deal then that can be had? And there may be elements of the Iranian regime that would step forward and say, we're willing to give up on those things and we'll make a deal. You just have to let us survive as sort of a truncated or rump Islamic republic. And then the president is in really a difficult position, because to allow a regime that killed so many people and ostensibly were there because they killed so many people is a difficult thing for the president to stomach, and certainly an even more difficult thing for the Israelis to stomach. And you could see the Israelis then taking matters into their own hands and finishing the war for the United States if it isn't finished. So I think the real complexity begins once the war starts. My sense is the Iranian people and the Israelis will go all the way. The Iranian people will rise up as the war begins, and they won't stop. And the Israelis are pretty determined to have this to be the last round with Iran. So my sense is there's a certain trajectory that will happen, even if that's not a fully decided thing at this point.
Definitely a lot to watch for here. David Wurmser, as always, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.